Ladies, let's start with the truth. The kind that doesn't flinch. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that doesn't beg for attention, likes, or approval. Here's that truth. The most powerful woman in any room is the one who is willing to walk away. Not because she's cold, not because she's indifferent, but because she knows her worth. We live in a world that trains women to chase, to bend, to please. Be softer. Be sweeter. Don't be too much. Don't want too little. Make him feel needed. Make him feel like a king even if he treats you like a pawn. And somewhere in all that noise, we are taught to forget our power. To trade our self-worth for the illusion of love. But I'm here to tell you something different. Men, real men, are magnetically drawn to women who do not orbit their lives around them. Not because these women play games, but because they operate from a place of quiet, unshakable strength. A woman who is centered in herself is not afraid to detach. She's not chasing, she's choosing. Detachment is not about being aloof or emotionless. It's about knowing that your value doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's attention span. It's about holding your head high whether they stay, leave, come closer, or pull away. It's a refusal to negotiate your dignity. Let's be honest, confidence is sexy, but not the kind that screams or seeks the spotlight. The most captivating confidence is the calm kind. The kind that doesn't try to prove anything. That's what detachment gives you, the freedom to show up without fear of loss. The ability to walk into a room and be full, not waiting for someone to fill you. And when you become that woman, when you stop begging, stop chasing, stop hoping they'll see your worth, you start shining in a way that is undeniable. You start walking differently, talking differently. You are no longer performing. You are owning. Do you know what happens when you detach from people who don't see your value? You stop shrinking. You stop dimming your light. You stop bending yourself into pieces to be enough for someone who doesn't even know what they're looking for. And in that release, you rise. Self-respect is not a luxury. It's a necessity. It's the backbone of your emotional and spiritual safety. When you respect yourself, you don't tolerate confusion. You don't chase mixed signals. You don't let someone treat your heart like a revolving door. Too many women confuse attachment with love. Love is not supposed to hurt. Love is not supposed to keep you anxious, checking your phone, wondering where you stand. Love doesn't make you feel small. Attachment is born from fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough. But when you start detaching from that fear, you reclaim your peace. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your softness when they've only shown you sharp edges. And you do not, under any circumstances, owe anyone access to you simply because they want it. Access to you is a privilege, earned, not assumed. The moment you shift from, I need him to see my worth, to I know my worth whether he sees it or not, your entire life changes. You become magnetic, and not because you're trying to be, but because you've stopped trying at all. You're simply being. And that energy, that realness, that is what draws in the kind of presence that matches your power, not drains it. So here's your call to action: detach to protect your peace. Detach to reclaim your dignity. Detach because you deserve a love that doesn't require you to abandon yourself to keep it. Let go of what doesn't serve you. Let go of people who confuse you. Let go of the belief that your value depends on someone else's ability to see it. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose. Be the woman who knows when to hold on and when to walk away. Be the woman who commands respect by the way she carries herself. Not because she demands it, but because it's impossible not to give it to her. Be the woman who detaches, not to punish, not to manipulate, but because she understands one timeless truth: her peace is priceless. Her power is sacred, and her presence, unforgettable. There's a misconception that when a woman pulls away, becomes quiet, or stops responding to chaos, it means she's cold or heartless. But detachment, in its truest form, is not about indifference. It's about self-respect. It's not a weapon used to punish someone. It's a shield that protects her from being pulled into a space where she no longer feels valued. In a society that constantly demands women to give more, to be more accommodating, more understanding, more forgiving, detachment becomes a radical act of self-love. It's the moment a woman chooses herself over the approval of someone who doesn't see her worth. There comes a point in a woman's life when she gets tired of the emotional tug of war. She gets tired of explaining herself, repeating herself, and waiting for someone to catch up to the love she was already offering. Detachment isn't a reaction. It's a response rooted in clarity. It's what happens when a woman realizes that she cannot keep pouring into cups that are full of holes. She sees that no matter how much she gives, it will never be enough for someone who refuses to receive her fully. And in that moment, rather than scream, cry, or beg, she pulls back. Not out of malice, but because she understands that her energy is sacred. A woman who detaches is not uncaring. In fact, it's often the deepest lovers who end up choosing detachment, because they've loved so hard and gotten so little in return. They've given their hearts to people who only brought confusion, half-effort, or emotional inconsistency. And when the pain outweighs the peace, she chooses distance. She doesn't do it to make a statement. She does it because continuing to stay would mean abandoning herself. And she's done doing that. She's done breaking her own heart just to keep someone else comfortable. In detachment, a woman reclaims her power. She is no longer driven by the need to be chosen, to be seen, or to be validated by someone else's presence. She finds herself no longer obsessively checking her phone, replaying conversations, or twisting herself into a version of what she thinks someone might love. Instead, she steps back into herself. She returns to the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She reconnects with the woman she was before she started shrinking to fit into someone else's idea of love. She realizes that the loudest love she ever needed was her own. The strength it takes to detach is not born overnight. It often comes after a series of disappointments, a pattern of being let down, misunderstood, or taken for granted. It is forged in the fire of emotional exhaustion, and when it finally arrives, it feels like peace. It feels like sitting in silence and not being afraid of it. It feels like no longer needing closure, because she's already given it to herself. It feels like deleting the message she was about to send, not because she doesn't care, but because she no longer feels the need to explain herself to someone who never truly listened. People around her might not understand this change. They might say she's become distant, that she's acting different, and they'd be right. She has changed. She's no longer operating from a space of need, but from a space of choice. She's not cold, she's clear. She's not bitter, she's better. Better at recognizing what drains her, what fuels her, and what aligns with her values. Detachment has given her a clarity that constant emotional entanglement never could. It has helped her see things, and people, for what they really are. In detachment, she is finally able to observe rather than absorb. She sees the patterns that once kept her stuck. She recognizes the behaviors she used to excuse. And rather than confronting everything head-on, she learns that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. She learns that silence speaks volumes, and that removing herself from situations that disrupt her peace is not weakness, it's wisdom. Detachment becomes a lens through which she filters everything that tries to access her mind, her heart, and her energy. The beauty of detachment is that it doesn't require anyone else to change. It doesn't ask for apologies, promises, or second chances. It's not about manipulating outcomes or trying to control people. It's simply about drawing a line between what she can't control and what she can. And then choosing her well-being every single time. It's about trusting that what is meant for her will never require her to fight for the bare minimum. It's about understanding that love, when it's real, won't make her question her worth. She's learned that not everyone deserves a front-row seat to her life. That access to her should be earned, not given away freely to anyone who shows up with sweet words and shallow intentions. She's learned to vet people with her spirit, not her loneliness. And in that learning, she no longer clings to what doesn't nourish her. She no longer explains her value in hopes of being appreciated. She simply becomes still, and in that stillness, in that quiet dignity, she becomes undeniable. Detachment isn't a closing of the heart, it's a returning to the self. It's a reconnection with inner truth, inner strength, and inner peace. It's the woman saying, I choose me, not with arrogance but with wisdom, not with ego but with experience. And once she understands that, she is no longer breakable by words, moods, or silence, because she's no longer seeking refuge in someone else. She's found her home within herself. Real confidence doesn't come from a perfectly filtered photo or a flood of compliments in your DMs. It doesn't come from being the most noticed in the room or the loudest voice in a conversation. That kind of confidence is performance. It needs a stage, an audience, and applause to survive. But the kind of confidence that truly changes lives, that draws people in without effort, comes from within. It's born in silence, in solitude, in the moments when no one is looking and there's no need to impress. It's cultivated when a woman begins to trust herself deeply and unapologetically, when her sense of worth is no longer up for debate. You can tell the difference immediately. A woman chasing attention is always restless. Her energy fluctuates depending on who's around, what they're saying, and how much validation she's receiving. She's constantly adjusting her tone, her appearance, even her personality, to match what she thinks others will admire. But a woman grounded in inner confidence walks into any space already complete. She doesn't need to be chosen, liked, or praised to feel powerful. She carries herself with a presence that says, "I know who I am." And that presence becomes impossible to ignore. This kind of confidence is quiet, but it's not timid. It doesn't need to shout or flaunt. It simply exists, steady, unshakable. It's the woman who doesn't engage in competition because she knows there's no need. She isn't threatened by another woman's beauty, success, or charm because she understands that admiration for someone else does not take anything away from her. She has nothing to prove. Her sense of worth is rooted in something deeper than surface-level comparisons. She moves through the world with certainty because she's not seeking permission to be who she is. Inner confidence is built, not bought. It's developed through experiences that test you, through moments when you felt invisible and still chose to stand tall. It's what forms when you go through heartbreak and still believe in love, when you fail and still get back up, when you face rejection and still know your value hasn't decreased. Confidence from within is carved out of discomfort, resilience, and self-honesty. It grows every time you choose to honor your boundaries, speak your truth, and hold your head high when everything around you tries to break you down. A woman with real confidence does not rely on anyone to define her. She doesn't need someone to tell her she's beautiful to feel beautiful. She doesn't wait for someone to validate her dreams before she begins to pursue them. She affirms herself. She compliments herself. She shows up for herself whether the world is clapping or not. Her reflection in the mirror is not just about looks. It's about alignment. She sees who she is becoming, and that vision fuels her more than any outside praise ever could. That kind of inner strength confuses people who are used to others seeking approval. They don't understand how she can stay so composed, so at ease, when she isn't the center of attention. They wonder why she doesn't seem to care what others think. But it's not that she doesn't care. It's that she's selective about where she places her energy. She knows that attention is fleeting. It can be given one day and taken the next. But the relationship she has with herself is lasting. It's not affected by trends, opinions, or applause. Real confidence makes her dangerous, not in a destructive way, but in the way that threatens systems built on insecurity and control. Because you can't manipulate a woman who doesn't need your validation. You can't play mind games with someone who knows her value. You can't impress her with status, money, or charm if those things are not aligned with substance. She can walk away from what looks good if it doesn't feel right. She listens to her intuition over public opinion. She knows her peace is more valuable than popularity. A confident woman speaks differently too. She doesn't over-explain. She doesn't justify her standards or water down her expectations to make others feel more comfortable. Her yes is clear, and so is her no. She's direct, not because she's rude, but because she respects her time and energy. She knows that honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, is more loving than pretending. And because she's not looking to be liked by everyone, she doesn't contort herself to avoid rejection. She accepts that not everyone will understand her, and she's okay with that. Her body language says it all. It's not forced, it's not exaggerated. She walks with a natural ease, stands with her shoulders back, and meets the world with open eyes instead of seeking approval in every glance. She's grounded, present, fully in tune with herself. There's a glow that radiates from her. Not because she's trying to be seen, but because she's no longer afraid of being seen exactly as she is. She doesn't chase the spotlight, but somehow, it follows her. The journey to this kind of confidence isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. It requires stripping away the noise, unlearning the lies, and standing firmly in your truth, even when that truth is misunderstood. It requires learning to sit with yourself, celebrate yourself, and commit to growth for your own sake. Not for anyone else's approval or praise. That's the kind of confidence that doesn't fade. That's the kind of presence that lingers long after the room goes quiet. Attachment often begins quietly. It disguises itself as love, as desire, as connection. It whispers the promise that if you hold on tightly enough, the person you care about will stay. They will choose you. They will give you the love you long for. But beneath that whisper lies a deeper, more unsettling voice, the voice of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of not being good enough unless someone else says you are. And before you even realize it, that fear wraps itself around your heart and calls itself love, when in truth, it's desperation. A woman caught in the grip of attachment often doesn't realize how much of herself she's sacrificing. She just wants to be loved, seen, valued. So she stays even when she's being disrespected. She chases even when she's being ignored. She gives endlessly, hoping that someday, the person she's holding on to will finally reciprocate. But she doesn't see that what she's holding on to isn't real love. It's a lifeline to avoid the emptiness she's terrified of facing. That's the trick attachment plays. It convinces you that without them, you are nothing. It builds your identity around someone else's presence. Fear-based attachment keeps women locked in cycles of emotional chaos. It tells them that love must be earned, chased, or proven. It ties their worth to someone else's mood, response, or affection. It creates a dependency where their sense of peace rises and falls with the actions of another person. That's not connection, it's bondage. It's the slow erosion of self, the constant second-guessing, the panic that sets in when texts go unanswered or when energy shifts without explanation. That fear feeds off insecurity and grows stronger the longer it is ignored. But when a woman begins to detach, a different energy takes over. Detachment is not the absence of love, it is the reclaiming of power. It is the shift from fear to clarity, from desperation to dignity. It is the moment she stops trying to control outcomes and starts trusting herself. In detachment, she no longer needs someone to complete her. She becomes complete on her own. She realizes that the presence of another person should never come at the cost of losing herself. And with that realization, she begins to let go. Not because she no longer cares, but because she finally cares enough about herself. Detachment is a decision. It's the choice to no longer participate in the mental gymnastics that attachment demands. It's the choice to no longer beg for crumbs when you deserve a feast. It's a declaration that your peace is no longer negotiable. And while it might be painful at first, because stepping away from what once felt like love is never easy, it eventually becomes liberating. Detachment gives you space to breathe, to think clearly, to reconnect with your own needs and desires. It replaces anxiety with stillness and chaos with calm. When you operate from detachment, you stop trying to decode mixed signals. You stop twisting yourself to fit into someone else's uncertainty. You stop seeking closure from people who were never open to begin with. You stop waiting for someone to choose you, and instead, you choose yourself. You recognize that not everyone deserves access to your heart, and that love should never come wrapped in confusion or pain. Detachment allows you to look at a situation honestly and say, "This no longer serves me," and walk away, not out of bitterness but out of strength. Powerful detachment is not loud. It doesn't come with a dramatic exit or angry words. It is quiet, composed, and final. It's the kind of leaving that doesn't announce itself, because it doesn't need to. It's the energy of a woman who knows her worth, so deeply that she no longer tolerates anything that threatens her peace. She may have once been consumed by the fear of losing someone, but now she's more afraid of losing herself. That's what power looks like. Not control over others, but control over your own reactions and emotions. The shift from attachment to detachment is a transformation. It's the breaking of a pattern, the reclaiming of lost parts of yourself. It's the moment you realize that you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. And instead of continuing to beg for what should have been given freely, you begin to give it to yourself. You become your own source of validation, comfort, and love. You learn to sit with your discomfort instead of escaping it, and in doing so, you grow stronger. You stop fearing solitude and start embracing it. In detachment, you find clarity. You begin to see the truth of situations that attachment once clouded. You see the red flags you ignored, the compromises you made, the pain you justified. And rather than judging yourself, you acknowledge it all with compassion. You understand that attachment came from a wounded place, but detachment is the sign of healing. It is the sign that you are no longer willing to abandon yourself to avoid being abandoned by someone else. It is the signal that you are ready to live from a place of wholeness rather than fear. Attachment might feel familiar, even addictive. But detachment, true, empowered detachment, is the doorway to freedom. It doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you love in a way that doesn't compromise who you are. You stop gripping so tightly and start trusting what is meant to stay will stay. You release the need to control, fix, or force. And in that release, you find a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, and no longer afraid to walk away from what doesn't align with her power. Self-respect is not a suggestion, not a luxury, not something to occasionally consider when it's convenient. It is non-negotiable. It is the foundation on which everything else stands. Your peace, your decisions, your boundaries, your standards. Without self-respect, you find yourself tolerating things that eat away at your spirit. You make excuses for people who don't deserve to be in your life. You stay in spaces where your voice is silenced, your value questioned, and your worth overlooked. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to forget who you are. But when self-respect is present, everything shifts. It becomes the internal compass that guides you away from chaos and toward calm. A woman with self-respect does not beg to be chosen. She does not chase validation, nor does she compromise her dignity for temporary attention. Her standards are not open to negotiation just because someone shows interest. She's not desperate to be seen because she already sees herself clearly. Her peace is not something she's willing to trade. Not for love, not for status, not for company. She knows that anything built on the sacrifice of herself, respect is destined to collapse. And she refuses to build her life on shaky ground. It's easy to confuse kindness with weakness. To believe that being accommodating means being agreeable to everything. But self-respect draws a clear line. It says, I can be kind without being a doormat. I can be compassionate without being taken advantage of. It reminds a woman that she is allowed to say no without explanation, to walk away without guilt, to demand better without apology. Self-respect protects her from the kind of relationships that drain her, from the environments that suffocate her, and from the expectations that don't align with who she is. When a woman honors her self-respect, she naturally attracts different energy. People begin to treat her according to the standard she sets. Those who can't rise to meet her level fall away, not because she pushes them, but because they sense they can't manipulate or diminish her. She becomes immune to the games that once held her hostage. She's no longer interested in proving her worth. She simply embodies it, and the more she values herself, the less she entertains anyone or anything that doesn't reflect that value back to her. Self-respect is what keeps a woman grounded when the world tries to shake her. It's the voice inside that says, you've come too far to go back now. You've healed too much to reopen those wounds. You've worked too hard to settle for less. It gives her the courage to walk away from what looks good, but feels wrong. It allows her to sit in solitude rather than surround herself with chaos. It teaches her that peace is not found in noise or distraction, but in the stillness that comes from being at home with herself. There will always be pressure to compromise, to bend a little more, to tolerate a little longer, to accept a little less. But self-respect refuses to be watered down. It doesn't adjust for convenience or make space for disrespect. It stands tall even when it's lonely. It chooses truth over comfort. And though it may come at the cost of losing people, it will never cost you yourself. Because the moment you start trading respect for someone's affection, you've already lost far more than you've gained. A woman who lives by herself, respect is not easily shaken. She doesn't fall apart when someone leaves or when a door closes. She understands that rejection is often redirection, that not everything denied to her was meant for her. And because she respects herself, she trusts the timing of her life. She knows that her worth is not determined by how others treat her, but by how she treats herself. That's why she invests in her growth, her healing, her purpose. She refuses to stay small for the sake of making others comfortable. Self-respect demands accountability. It requires looking in the mirror and asking, am I honoring who I really am? Am I living in a way that reflects my truth? It's not just about how others treat you, it's about how you treat yourself. The boundaries you set, the words you use, the thoughts you entertain, the choices you make. It's in the food you eat, the relationships you maintain, the dreams you pursue. Self-respect permeates every area of life, and when it's present, it brings alignment, integrity, and deep inner peace. It's not always easy to live this way. Sometimes, it means walking alone. It means disappointing people who wanted you to stay silent, to stay small, to stay the same. It means saying no when everyone expects a yes. It means choosing yourself over approval. But the strength that comes from living with self-respect is unmatched. It gives you the ability to look back with no regret, to stand in any room without shrinking, to love yourself so fully that being mistreated is no longer an option. A woman anchored in self-respect is not just respected by others. She becomes a force of nature. Her presence speaks before she does. She doesn't have to demand respect, because it's already in the way she walks, the way she speaks, the way she carries herself. She doesn't settle for crumbs because she knows she's the table. She doesn't cling to what hurts because she trusts what heals. And in honoring herself, she teaches the world how to treat her, not with words, but with the quiet, unwavering power of self-respect. There is something profoundly magnetic about a woman who can walk away. Not because she's heartless. Not because she doesn't feel deeply or love fully, but because she refuses to lose herself in the process of loving someone else. She knows her boundaries, her worth, her value. She understands that not every connection is meant to last forever, and she doesn't chain herself to a sinking ship just to prove her loyalty. The woman who can walk away does not do it out of weakness. It's the strongest decision she can make. It takes immense courage to choose yourself when your heart wants to stay. Men are drawn to her, not because she plays games, but because she doesn't need them. Her presence isn't fueled by desperation. She doesn't cling or chase. She allows people to come and go without begging or pleading. She's rooted in the truth that she is whole on her own. Her value doesn't rise or fall based on who chooses her or who doesn't. That kind of energy is rare, and rare is irresistible. She becomes the kind of woman who isn't easily impressed, whose attention is earned, not assumed, and who can say, no, with grace and certainty. When a woman stays beyond the point of peace, she begins to diminish herself. She tolerates behaviors she would never advise another woman to accept. She sacrifices her standards for the illusion of connection. But when she remembers who she is, when she reclaims her power, she becomes the kind of woman who will never beg to be loved. She won't sit in emotional starvation, hoping for crumbs of affection. She'll recognize the imbalance and quietly choose to leave, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. She chooses freedom over fantasy. The ability to walk away is not about playing hard to get. It's about being grounded in reality. It's understanding that if someone truly values you, you won't have to convince them to show up. You won't have to explain what should be obvious. You won't have to overextend yourself to be seen, heard, or cherished. The woman who can walk away doesn't stay stuck in potential. She doesn't live on promises. She evaluates the facts, honors her feelings, and acts accordingly. That emotional discipline, that clarity, makes her powerful beyond words. She's not bitter. She's not cold. She's just not willing to abandon herself anymore. She's not afraid of solitude. In fact, she welcomes it when the alternative is chaos. Her peace is her priority, and she will protect it at all costs. People are captivated by her calm. By the way she doesn't react out of panic. By the way she doesn't try to control every outcome. She understands that walking away doesn't mean losing. It often means winning back her time, her energy, her joy. It's an act of emotional maturity, not emotional detachment. The woman who can walk away often commands more respect than the one who stays and endures. Because people recognize that she's not easily manipulated. She's not someone you can treat poorly and expect to keep. Her tolerance for disrespect is low, not because she's arrogant, but because she's healed. She knows what it feels like to betray herself, and she refuses to go back there. She walks away, not to prove a point to others, but to honor a promise she made to herself. To never again lower her standards just to be loved. There's strength in restraint, in silence, in stillness. She doesn't make scenes. She doesn't try to make others feel guilty. She simply removes herself from situations that no longer align with her truth. That absence, that quiet exit, often speaks louder than any confrontation could. And the ones who took her for granted often realize too late that her presence was a privilege. The way she loved, supported, and gave was something rare, and now it's gone. Her ability to walk away becomes the loudest reminder of what they lost. She teaches others through her actions. Not everyone will understand it. Some will call her cold. Others will say she's selfish. But the ones who truly see her strength will admire her endlessly. Because walking away is not easy. It requires detachment from outcomes, confidence in solitude, and trust in the future. It demands a belief that what lies ahead is better than what she's leaving behind. It's not just a physical departure. It's a spiritual declaration. I choose me. That kind of woman doesn't just survive. She thrives. She becomes a standard. A mirror. A reflection of what it looks like to value yourself so fiercely that you won't settle for anything less than mutual respect. She becomes the woman others remember long after she's gone. Not because of the noise she made, but because of the peace she brought. The woman who can walk away never needs to prove her worth. Her ability to do so proves it for her. That inner strength, that silent conviction, is more attractive than any outward display of beauty or charm. The truth is, it's not that she doesn't love deeply. She does. She just refuses to love at the cost of herself. She knows that true love never requires self-betrayal. She understands that her heart is not something to be handled carelessly. So if she's not being met with the same energy, effort, and respect she brings to the table, she won't beg, plead, or convince. She'll simply rise, gather herself, and walk away. Not because she has to, but because she can.